Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. It is Sunday afternoon here on Labor Day weekend, and we are here to talk about Purdue's 39-35 loss to Fresno State to open up the 2023 season and to open up the Ryan Walters era on a bit of a sour note as he joins his two predecessors, Daryl Hazel and Jeff Brom, in having lost their first game at Purdue. We are going to break down everything here today from a hot afternoon inside Ross-Ade Stadium, talk about all three phases of the game and just a little bit big picture of where this Purdue team is and where it's going to go moving forward here after a disappointing loss to get things started. Real quick, if you don't, be sure to follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Lots to talk about over there. Lots of tweets from the game. Going to be lots to talk about all week. So be sure to follow on Twitter @BoilersBeyond. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are in 2 episodes a week mode now. So later this week, obviously, we'll preview Virginia Tech. And as always, I'm here to answer your questions. Tweet them to me @BoilersBeyond. Email them to me, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. We'll get to them on the show. So let's get into it here. Purdue falls 39-35 in the season opener. The story here, if you ask me, is about the defense. Purdue hires Ryan Walters not solely because of his defense. You know, that's not necessarily the reason he was hired, but his defense is what made him a rising star in the coaching community. His defense is what raised his profile to the level of being ready to be a head coach. And there was a lot of hype around the airstrike. Some of that was certainly pushed by Purdue. Some of that was not. And it didn't strike on Saturday. In fact, it got struck upon. Fresno State puts up 39 points. Fresno State puts up 487 yards of total offense, 371 through the air. Look, I think this is a very, very prime example of, the classic Jimmys and Joes versus X's and O's theory that we talked about on this show a lot. Right now, it doesn't look like Purdue's secondary has the Jimmys and Joes to play at a high level, to do what Ryan Walters asks of them. This is a defense that asks a lot of its secondary. It's a lot of 5 defensive backs where you have essentially 3 safeties or, in Purdue's case, Cam Allen kind of playing that nickel spot. But you've got a safety real deep, but you're asking your corners to play a lot of one-on-one. And if you look at how it went, it didn't necessarily go great for Purdue. A lot of one-on-one matchups ended in Fresno guys being open. Markevius Brown did not have a great day. Botros Alessandro, the number 3 corner, the only mention of him was on that first drive when he got beat for a touchdown pretty badly up in the northwest corner of the stadium. Purdue's secondary missed too many tackles. You saw a few instances where Fresno State was able to take a catch and add a number of yards after it onto the end of the run because Purdue's secondary didn't tackle particularly well. You look at Cam Allen had some missed tackles. Dylan Thieneman, in his first Big Ten, his first ever game, I think that's a little bit more excusable. I think you can certainly understand why there's a bit of an adjustment period there. It happens, but Purdue missed a lot of tackles. At the end of the day, I think there are just very real questions here about Purdue's secondary and the ability to do schematically what Ryan Walters wants it to do. Mikey Keene was really good. You have to give him some credit here. He was absolutely excellent. He had the one interception on a pass that I've gone back and watched it a few times. I don't know that it was that bad of a pass, that bad of a decision. I think it was a really good play by Dylan Thieneman. Outside of that, 70% completion, 366, 4 touchdowns. He was really, really good. Purdue struggled, obviously, in coverage. Brooks has 170 yards on 9 catches. Jalen Gill, a former big-time recruit, was really good for them. Purdue wasn't able to contain in the secondary, and I think it's interesting because Purdue's pass rush was good. I thought Purdue's pass rush was just fine. Purdue got into the backfield quite a bit. You look at, Purdue had 15 quarterback hurries in the game. That's a lot. That's a lot of quarterback hurries to have. I thought Kydron Jenkins and Nick Scorton were both really effective coming off the edge. Jenkins got home once. Scorton didn't get home at all. No sacks for him. But I thought they were both really good at what they were asked to do, and that is go get the passer. Now, Mikey Keene was able to extend things with his feet. He was able to find guys downfield because when he extended, Purdue's secondary wasn't able to cover for all that long. It's a multi-pronged issue here. And it's not one that I think you can fix overnight. I think more reps, more snaps will certainly help. But it's not one that's going to be easily fixed. Purdue's run defense was fine. Held Fresno State to 3.1 yards per carry. It got Fresno State in a ton of 3rd and long situations. It really did. And that's what you want to happen. You want to get Fresno State in these situations where it's in 3rd and long. You can send those pass rushers to go get home. But, the common thing was Purdue unable to get home. Fresno State extends the play, finds a receiver downfield, so on and so forth. Certainly a disappointing one on that end. It's going to be interesting to watch this defense moving forward because you can't give up 39 points. That's at the end of the day, that's just how it is. Fresno State was able to hold on to the ball way too long. Where's time of possession here? Fresno State dominated time of possession. 36 minutes time of possession compared to Purdue's 23. So that tells you a lot you need to know. Purdue's defense couldn't get off the field. Fresno State goes 11 of 17 on 3rd downs. 82 plays for Fresno State to Purdue's 60. That's kind of the story of this. On the offensive side of the ball, I thought Purdue was just okay. Keep in mind something here. 35 points is a bit deceptive when it comes to evaluating Purdue's offense. Tyrone Tracy, 98-yard kick return touchdown, first one in a decade for Purdue. Excellent, obviously, but that wasn't Purdue's offense. Purdue also got a short field when, in the first half, it got the ball at the Fresno 17-yard line after a big punt return. Purdue needed 10 snaps, 8 plays, 2 penalties to get into the end zone from the 17-yard line. So that's not... Obviously, the kick return doesn't take anything away from the offense, but that's something to keep in mind here when evaluating this. I thought Hudson Card was fine. I thought he was good, not great. He played well enough for Purdue to win. 17 for 30, 254, 2 touchdowns. Completion percentage isn't great, but if you take away that last drive when Purdue's got a minute to go and he had 3 or 4 incompletions just because you're desperate to make things happen, he was pretty good. He made some nice throws throughout the day. He was good enough. Deion Burks, obviously the star of the game on offense for Purdue. He'd gotten a lot of hype coming into the season, and you saw why on Purdue's first possession. He takes it 84 yards to the house. That's big. That's really big. Another time later in the game, he has that 44-yard catch down the sideline, had another touchdown in there. Really good game for him, but I think when you look at this Purdue receiving core, again, some of the questions I had coming into this season is, who breaks out here? Abdur-Rahman Yassin made some catches. Good to see him healthy. He's a guy who I think can be a good piece for Purdue this year. TJ Sheffield was quiet. Purdue didn't rotate much at receiver. You saw Canyon a little bit. You saw Jaden Dixon-Veal for a play or two, I think. But this was kind of the crew. Burks, Yassin, Sheffield, and then with the split tight end out, Max Clare getting most of the reps there. That was it. Purdue did not rotate much, and that was something that I think you saw on both sides of the ball a bit. Purdue didn't rotate as much as I expected, especially on offense. I think only 17 players saw the field, and that includes some injuries on the offensive line and 3 running backs playing. So not much rotation. Purdue kind of stuck with this crew. Running the ball was interesting. I'd been on the record here saying that I thought Purdue would run the ball quite a bit, even in a quote-unquote air raid offense. That wasn't really the case. Now, if you look at the numbers at the end of the game, 30 passes to 30 runs, Hudson Card had 6 carries. At least 4 or 5 of those were scrambles on pass plays, so that skews it a bit. Purdue didn't run the ball much, though, especially in the first half. I think, that was a lot of the discourse that you saw from folks, is that Purdue's not running the ball at all. Something that, is a little familiar to Purdue fans from recent years. But look, it was a little hard. Devin Maccabee puts his first carry on the ground. Purdue recovered. He was fine after that. Had some good carries in the second half. Purdue's offensive line, though, man, not much of a push. You can diagnose some of the problems here. You're down to your third-string center to start. I don't know how big of a gap it is from Kaltenberger to Austin Johnson, but I think it is probably a sizable gap from Gus Hartwig to Austin Johnson. Then Johnson gets hurt. You slide in Jalen Grant, stuff Ben Farrell in there. Then Jalen Grant gets hurt, so you bring Austin Johnson back in the game. It was it was an unfortunate rash of injuries for Purdue up there. But at any point in the game, Purdue was struggling to get a push in the run game. You saw, as I mentioned earlier, that possession where Purdue has 10 snaps from the 17-yard line in. It just felt like Purdue was running it into the line on every play, and it was getting nowhere. It tried quarterback sneaks. It tried running out of the shotgun or pistol. Not my favorite thing to do from the 1-yard line, but hey, there are reasons to do it. I get it, but at the end of the day, this run game wasn't very good. I was surprised to see Tyrone Tracy utilized so little in there. Just 3 carries for him, 5 for Downing. It's hard, you don't want to make sweeping judgments in week 1 because things can change quite a bit. But Purdue did not run the ball particularly well. I don't think Purdue really wants Hudson Card to run much. It didn't appear that there were any designed runs for him. I don't know that you're going to do that a ton anyway, but I don't think Purdue's comfortable with the idea of him getting hurt. He got hit a time or two, and you could see on the sidelines, Purdue wasn't all that comfortable with that. I think another part of the run game that's interesting here, Garrett Miller being out is pretty big. Paul Paferi's out as well. That was weird. I did not expect to see him out when Purdue issued the injury report 2 hours before kickoff. But you've got Max Clare and Drew Bibber in there. And neither of those guys is much of a blocking tight end. And in a lot of sets, Purdue is essentially lined up in 4 wide with 3 wide receivers and then a tight end split out wide. So you're running, behind a 5-man offensive line with no help. And not to say that those guys weren't help when they were lined up in line, but blocking isn't their forte. That's something to monitor because Purdue, with a 5-man front, was not getting much of a push, especially on the interior. we thought that might be the strength of the offensive line this year. But I think the one thing you can really take away from this is when you look at the transfers that Purdue brought in, look, a lot of these guys didn't shine. A lot of them were fine. They were average. Purdue has to, and it's not an overnight thing, but relying on transfers forever and ever is not sustainable. You have to develop in-house. You have to have some homegrown guys playing key roles for you, because when you look at this, on the interior of the offensive line, you had all transfers in there today or yesterday. Farrell, Johnson, Grant, who's the other one? Preston Nichols from UNLV. Those guys are all transfers playing on the interior, and nothing great. You do give Fresno credit. That's a good defense. That's a defense that finished inside the top 20 nationally last year. That's relative. They play in the Mountain West, so you take that for what it's worth. But it's a solid defense. Fresno State outplayed Purdue, plain and simple. Purdue did have some juice in special teams that was nice to see. The kickoff return was great. It was funny if you were listening to our Twitter space the other night that I did, Thursday night maybe? Wednesday night? We talked about that, and I said, no way. I pick it every year to happen. I'm not picking it this year. And then, of course, it happens in the first game. But Tyrone Tracy, I think he's a good guy to have back there. He's a good athlete. And he made a nice play on that to start the second half. TJ Sheffield had a nice punt return. He took 129 yards, set up a Purdue touchdown. That was great. That was really good to see for Purdue. Now, on the flip side, you miss a field goal from 43. Freehill had a ton of distance on it. Would have been long enough from 53, but he pushes it wide right. Ansel was fine. Punting game was okay for Purdue. You had offsides on the opening kickoff of the season. That cost you over 20 yards, essentially, because Fresno elects to re-kick it. Purdue, kicking off from the 30-yard line, Fresno takes it to the 45. Without the offsides, Fresno would have started inside its 25. It didn't matter. Purdue went 3 and out and then scored on its drive on the Burks 84-yard touchdown catch. But that's something you circle as potentially costly. All in all, you just look at this box score, and Fresno was the better team. Time of possession, it won. Total yards, it won by 124 yards. More pass yards, more rush yards. Third down. I mean, that's the story of the game right there. Purdue was not particularly good on third down, and Fresno State was very good on third down. A lot of folks talking about Ryan Walters in terms of coaching decisions, and we discussed it on the podcast, previewing this game. Ryan Walters' first game, it's his debut. How does he do in his first game as a head coach? Look, there were some moments that, he'd like to have back. I think the one you circle more than anything is right before halftime. Purdue has the ball with 50... Well, let me get my notes out here. Purdue gets the ball back with 57 seconds left, and with 30 seconds left, it's lining up to punt. Fresno gets the ball with 22 seconds left at its own 47. It gets into field goal range, knocks in a 52-yarder before half. So, that right there is a 3-point swing at least, assuming that Purdue would be able to get, just run out the clock essentially. A lot of hand wringing about play calling. I'm not here to question it too much yet. Obviously running between the tackles was not particularly effective for Purdue. We'll see long term. Is it an offensive line needs to get healthy thing? Is it just the offensive line's not good enough? Is it a thing with the running backs? I don't know. I don't think it's Stephen Maccabee, but You can only get so much out of one game. That's kind of the downside of week one is it's all you have to go off of. I could sit here and talk for an hour about it, but there's only so much to say. It really hurt Purdue though when it starts the fourth quarter. It's got the ball, 3rd and goal at the 1. A pass to Canyon is incomplete. Then Maccabee gets stuffed. Red zone trip with no scores. You think about this game, Purdue doesn't score there when it has the ball at the 1-yard line. Purdue misses a 43-yard field goal. There's 10 points you left out there. Now, in fairness, Fresno missed a 20-yard field goal itself. So, it's hard to necessarily say that it's just Purdue who left points on the board. But, there were missed opportunities there. Kind of in the big picture, this based off Twitter reaction, based off message board reaction, obviously Purdue fans aren't very happy about this. I get it. Fresno State's a pretty good team. That much is known. I talked about this. This is a team that's won 10 games back-to-back seasons. This is a team that won the Mountain West last year. And this is a program that for the past 2 decades has been solid, has been, one of the better Group of 5 programs over multiple decades now. If you want to have a conversation about paying a program that's consistently one of the better ones in the Group of 5, paying them $1.3 million to come play you, I'm open to that conversation. You know how I feel about scheduling. And now Purdue is looking down the barrel of 11 straight Power 5 games to end this thing. Scheduling doesn't help. But, when you look at raising the profile of a program, we had a question about this on the show last week. How does Purdue raise the profile of its program? This doesn't help. You look at just recent memory now, Brom era and now Walters era, you've lost to 3 Group of 5 teams, Eastern Michigan, Nevada, and now Fresno State. Fresno State's certainly the best program of those 3, but they're not good losses to take. They're not good losses to have, ticking across the scoreboard for folks on Sunday morning and they see that Purdue lost to Fresno State. That's not great. Most people who are, hardcore into college football know that Fresno State's good, know that this was a short spread and that this isn't, particularly surprising, but it's not a great look. That much is very known. A lot of folks talking here, and this was an interesting thing. There's so much vitriol out there towards Jeff Brom. A lot of the conversation is about what he left and how, someone tweeted at me and said, well, look at some of these players that Jeff Brom left at Purdue or that Jeff Brom inherited at Purdue and look at what, Ryan Walters inherited. Look, it's a different era of college football than it was in 2017. With the transfer portal, everything is different. If Spencer Holstead and Eric Miller are on the field for Purdue and you can knock Marcus Bowe to inside, maybe things look different. If you have a 3-man defensive front of Branson Dean, Lawrence Johnson, and Jack Sullivan, they don't transfer, things probably look a little different. It's hard to say. It's not easy to compare. Look at what Deion Sanders did out at Colorado yesterday. That's an all-new team out of the transfer portal that went in and won games. Won a game against a good team. There's no Travis Hunter out there for most people that's accessible, but you get what I'm saying here. This is not something that I think should be a complete black mark on the Ryan Walters era. I don't think folks should be, trying to look revisionist history. Did Purdue make the right move hiring him? Look, let's give it time here. But there's reason for concern. I think the path to a bowl game here is really, really difficult. You saw a very, very real lack of depth on the field for Purdue in the game yesterday. You saw a very real lack of high-end talent on the field for Purdue yesterday. That's not to say that Purdue doesn't have good players, but this is not a great team. This is a team that's going to have to scratch and claw through everything this year. I'm just reading through responses here on Twitter. Obviously fans are upset, and that's fair. It's a disappointing loss. It is disappointing because there was a lot of hype here. Purdue had promoted a lot of hype. Fans had gotten very into it. Where Ryan Walters had a big summer of recruiting. He's an energetic guy. He's young. He relates to fans well. There was a lot of enthusiasm. The stadium looked great. I will say that. That is absolutely true. The stadium looked excellent. The new south end zone was very nice. The Tiller Tunnel looks very good. Obviously, students were filing out a little earlier than you'd hope, but it was also hot out there. I get it. All in all, it's a disappointing start. It's not anything that Purdue can't rebound from. You have two non-conference games here against teams that are a lot like Fresno State. Virginia Tech is fine. Virginia Tech went 3-8 last year, beat Old Dominion. I haven't gotten to watch those highlights yet, but Virginia Tech is fine. Syracuse is fine. It was a marginal bowl team last year. It's fine. These are games Purdue can win, but Purdue has to improve rather rapidly to win those games because there are some pretty real questions about this team. Going to be fascinating to see where they go from here because adversity has hit already. Ryan Walters brought that up in his post-game presser. Now we see how they respond to it. And from there, you determine kind of what the outlook of this season is. The next 3 games will tell you all you need to know. If Purdue doesn't win the next 2, I think a bowl game is probably entirely off the table. Not that a bowl game is the end-all, be-all anymore, but Purdue's got to go win these games if it wants to have a shot at playing in the postseason. Will it? We will find out. But that's all I've got for today. Thank you for spending time with me talking about Purdue's 39-35 loss to Fresno State. We'll be back here midweek. We're going to preview Virginia Tech. Any final thoughts on Fresno State that I think of that I missed, we will talk about. But looking forward to that. Looking forward to discussing it more. Tweet me any questions you have at BoilersBeyond or email them to me, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. And we will be back here later this week. So until then, guys, enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend and take care.